Welcome, dear listeners. We're doing something different today. We are starting with a word from a sponsor, Tree City Track Club. Tree City Track Club is built on a simple yet powerful idea. When runners come together, something magical happens. The Tree City Track Club philosophy embraces the fundamentals of improvement, consistent training, mostly easy miles with strategic intensity. But what sets them apart is their belief in the transformative power of group training. When dedicated runners unite, they push each other to new heights while building lasting bonds. Whether you're looking for workout partners, easy run companions, or ways to give back through volunteering, Tree City Track Club offers a path to become both a better runner and a more engaged member of the community. Tree City Track Club. Come run with us and be part of something bigger. You can learn more at www.treecitytrackclub.org. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Run From the Norm podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with an incredible guest, someone whose journey through ultrarunning is nothing short of inspiring. Lynette McDougal has been pushing her limits on the trails for well over 20 years now, completing a laundry list of legendary races like the Bigfoot 200, Across the Year 72-hour, I'm Tough 100-miler, Fat Dog 120, Bighorn, Wasatch, Scout Mountain Ultras, Zion Ultras, Grand Canyon Ultras, Javelina, Speed Goat, Ultra Trail Australia, Tarawera Ultramarathon, Born to Run Ultra, Pine to Palm, the Bear, and with over 1,000 total tickets in the lottery in 2025, she's going to be lining up to add a finish at the Hard Rock 100 to her impressive resume. But what really stands out is her deep love for the experience, embracing the highs, the lows, and the moments that make these races truly unforgettable. Beyond the miles, Lynette's story is one of resilience and transformation, from rediscovering running as an outlet to overcoming self-doubt, learning to adapt her training, and finding strength through community. She's a testament to what it means to keep moving forward no matter the obstacles. Whether it's grinding out 200 miles through the mountains or giving back as a volunteer and mentor in the ultra scene, she truly embodies the spirit of this sport. Get ready for a conversation about endurance, self-discovery, and the pure joy of getting lost in the wilderness. It's that time again. It's time to run from the norm. All right, Lynette McDougal, thank you so much for making the drive out here and sitting down to chat with me. I want to start with a question, but as I was going through your ultra sign up, you started ultras in 2023, and you have done about everything out there. I mean, it's a laundry list. You've done the local stuff. I'm Tough, Scout, Wilson
Can
Creek.
I correct you real quick?
Yes, you absolutely can.
2003, not 2023.
Oh, is that what I said?
Yeah.
Oh, man, you've only been doing it for a year and a half. God, 2003.
No, only because, not for those accolades, but no, I haven't done all of that in a year and a half.
Yeah, correct me. I get nervous with these things. We hit record and my mind starts going.
You're good.
But you've done Speed Goat, the Ultra Trail, Mont Blanc, Australia, Pine to Palm, Badger Mountain. You've got Hard Rock coming up, which I'd like to ask you about. The Bear, Javelina, Wasatch, Bigfoot 200, Fat Dog 120, Bighorn. The list goes on and on. What's the most important lesson you've learned about yourself over the 20 plus years of doing these things from when you first started?
I'd actually have to say I did Bigfoot last year. Finishing that was in my head. I felt really strong with it, and they did have to actually modify the course due to a fire. It was supposed to be an A to B. We were supposed to kind of circumnavigate Mount St. Helens, and then we would end up in this town of Randall. And the fire was, I think, at mile 150-ish. And then they were doing road work on the Mount St. Helens side. So that wasn't going to be open during the weekday. So we ended up doing 50-mile out and backs.
When did they modify the course? How soon before the race?
Literally, the race started on a Friday, and I think it was Wednesday when the fire started.
Holy smokes.
So part of it was, because they'd even had in the, like when you sign up and the possibility of refunds, It's like, if there's a fire and it's cancel of a fire, we're sorry, you're not getting your money back.
Yeah, that's it.
But because it was so close, they'd already bought everything. Mm-hmm. So it was this scramble of, we got to do something.
They're committed.
Yeah. You know, and what will the Forest Service allow us to do? So we ended up doing 50-mile out and backs. And I think it was after doing the first 100 miles and heading back out, gauging on, okay, I'm really doing well time-wise, so I'm going to make cutoffs. And so it was really starting to project forward of starting to see myself at the finish line, even though I still had like 100 miles left to go. But having the friend support, I mean, I got to the last 13 miles and my body, like it's a downhill on this dirt road and then you're 10 miles on asphalt.
Oh, geez. And at that point, just pounding, I bet.
And it had been 30 miles of that pavement.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's like time-wise, I knew I was totally fine, but my body was just totally taking a break. I started kind of walking in that last 13 miles and then slowly ran a little bit of it because then in your head going, oh, my God, I've already been out here this long. And
I just want to be done.
But I think, I broke my phone out and I'm not on social media a lot, but I started getting text messages from friends who I don't really converse with a lot. And I realized they've been following me. And it was just like
messages of encouragement.
Yeah. And I really worked hard. I mean, I had a rough patch going through menopause, or just dealing with, I naturally slowed down.
How does that change your body? I mean, obviously I'm a dude asking, so I don't know.
But I think it does relate to going into menopause. All I had been doing was running. So it was a combination of, it was 2020. So I say I went through menopause instead of COVID, but it was, it was Jeremy Humphrey. So I was supposed to be in High Lonesome. High Lonesome got canceled. I was supposed to be in Wasatch. Wasatch got canceled. Jeremy had offered to let me run I Am Tough. And that was the super course.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went out there to go, okay, so what is this all about? And we were supposed to do Ladybug, Jug Mountain. We were going to go to Lake Fork and then end where the South Crestline aid station.
Were you running it or were you sweeping it?
Well, so that year, this was before the actual 2020 race. This was just so what is this going to involve?
Gotcha.
And he also kind of wanted to see how long it would take. He didn't say this, but we were kind of talking, so I don't think he classified me as a slower person, but just kind of wanted to see how cutoffs would be. And we got up over Jug Mountain and I was just like, oh my God.
That is such a tough climb.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the descent on the scrambling on that backside, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And so we got down to Louis Lake. And then that's when we had decided to cut over and end up doing a loop. So we went to Bouldering, did the finish because it was just like, oh my God, I don't have this in me.
Yeah.
And that whole run, while Jeremy's not that far ahead of me, it was all of a sudden, I was like, I'm out of structural balance because all I have been doing for so long, I really hadn't been in the gym up at that point, maybe 5 years. Like all I had been doing was running. And so my hips.
So no other functional.
No.
See, that's interesting because I'm dealing with a lot of those things, getting older and not doing those other movements. The hips start tightening up and it starts to impact you. And you had mentioned when we were going back and forth that you're into other things. Maybe that's new where you're snowshoeing, I think, or you're doing cross-country skiing, a lot more activities.
I try to do more cross-country skiing than I am. I advise the school races. So I just happen to be over in the Nordic side.
Oh, okay.
Only because one year, April wanted to start skate skiing, April Wilbur. And so that was when I had said, well, I had offered, I'm like, well, can you switch me over to the Nordic side? That way I'm already there. And then I tried to do the skate skiing and just
tough.
And then trying to be more aware of heart rate zone. I will cross country ski instead.
Okay.
And so when April and I have gone out a couple of times, it is sort of like the tortoise and the hare to where cross country classic style, I can stay a lot more steady and she zips off and then she's like, and I catch up to her and
catches her breath and there you go.
And I find that for me much more comfortable.
And it's probably a good mix up of just the running, I kind of went on a left turn there. You were saying you're doing I'm Tough.
No, and that was it the whole time before we started to descend down Jug Mountain. It was all of a sudden I was like, I need to go see a Rolfer. So I don't know if you're familiar with Rolfing. Basically, it's kind of like chiropractics in that it's not adjustments. What it is trying to realign your fascia so that then you retain or regain that structural integrity.
Interesting.
And I had gone through a series like years before. So my husband, we moved to Boise in 2006.
From
Ashland, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
And the year-ish prior to us moving, my husband had actually slipped on black ice riding his bike to work.
Oh.
And in Ashland, they throw down volcanic rock when the road gets icy. And so it turned out he had landed on a small piece of rock. and it took over a year to fester, and he ended up having bursitis.
Oh my gosh.
In his hip. And they had done MRIs, and he had been in a rafting accident where he doesn't have an ACL. He never had it repaired. Was all of this due to that? And they were trying to rule that out. And he was going in for his cortisone shot. And of course, I'm just going to blame this on he being a man. But anyway, it's just he still had like the same pair of underwear he had happened to wear that day.
Oh, jeez.
And so he's like getting undressed for the doctor, and he realizes because the rock ripped through his rain pants, through his underwear. And he's like, oh,
wait a minute.
You know, this is where it is, because all MRI hadn't come up with the bursitis.
How interesting.
And it wasn't until he went, this is what happened over a year ago.
This is the same underwear I was wearing, by the way.
And it's right here. You know, and that was when then the guy was able to manipulate it and go, oh yeah, your bursa is like totally swollen. You got bursitis. And Rolfing really helped him.
Huh.
And so it was just so funny. I just remember trying to catch up to Jeremy like on that downhill, and that's all that was going through my head was Rolfing, this is what I got to do. And so I now migrated over just because of availability of practitioners, Rossiter, which is the same thing. In Rolfing, they use your hands. And Rossiter, they use their feet. So you have somebody stepping on you. And Rossiter is shorter, so it's like 25 minutes, but it's much more dynamic as opposed to passive. So she'll be stepping somewhere, and I have to move my leg or limb or something to also get that fascia to move as well as she's there. And I've been doing that for like 3 years now.
And it making a huge difference?
Total game changer.
That's interesting. Yeah. I was reading a book and they were talking about fascia, and this was probably a year or two ago, and it was kind of blowing my mind because once you start getting into it and seeing how the fascia really impacts everything else and obviously ties it all together and you start working it, it's crazy the difference that it makes.
Yeah.
Well, how are you staying healthy then for 20 plus years, 2003, of doing these crazy distances? Because you just did across the years again, which you've done multiple times.
Twice. That was just
twice. Yeah. And this, you did it's a 72?
72 hours.
Have you had any major injuries otherwise?
You know, knock on wood, no.
What do you do to stay healthy?
Again, I really just try to keep moving. Again, my thing is, I don't think I'm there. I don't know all the answers, and I'm not bulletproof. And now my next thing is, I know I really need to incorporate just random mobility more. Okay. So I really got back. So the last 4 years, going on since the January of 2021, I do have a coach. I am in the gym doing strength stuff.
And how many days a week do you do that?
At least 3 times a week.
Okay.
So at least twice upper body. Like now that I'm going to be running more to get ready for the summer, I am backing off to just 1 leg day. Okay. So it's like after Bigfoot, I really tried to go back to having 2 upper body, 2 leg days kind of thing. Then I also started doing speed work. So I did join Tree City Track Club.
Oh, nice. Shout out to those guys. That's cool.
Brian Anderson's we were running one day and he's like, what do you think of speed work? And I was like, oh my God, I probably really should do that.
Yeah, I've been saying that for years too. More consistent.
And I never seriously have. And so since I never seriously have, I wasn't consistent. So now it was like, so I've been twice and I plan on being a regular. I paid my $50.
Nice.
Because again, they're super supportive.
Absolutely.
And that's all
accountability.
Yeah. I can only make it into the gym because somebody's already pre-programmed to something and I got it on my phone and I can follow it. I am not somebody who can be creative at that end.
Yeah.
This is this, and this is what I'm going to do today. No,
I'm the same way. I want somebody just to tell me what to do and then I'll go do the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you're getting that now with Tree City Track Club too.
Yeah.
So leading up to the last few years, you were mostly just running, just going out and doing the thing. And now in the last few years, it's more focused on mixing it up, trying to get into speed work, strength work, mobility, and all those things. And I assume it's making, a big difference.
It is. Yeah. And again, I hope the speed work will definitely help with hard rock because I am counting on having to be out there and use as much of the clock as is available. And so then therefore it's like I can't waste the clock at an aid station or sleeping too much or
Yeah, what are you most excited about? I mean, I'm assuming like a lot of us, that's a bucket list dream. So to get in and be able to do that. I started
applying in 2012.
Did you really? So how many tickets overall did you have in?
I had 1,024.
Holy shit.
So the last time I had entered other than this year was in 2019. The 2019 race got canceled because of too much snow. So they rolled everybody over to 2020. 2020 happened. And at that time they had 3 categories. Veterans, 10 or more finishes. The never started, So if you started but had a DNF, you got to put in the everybody else category,
Oh, okay.
which was easier to get into.
Mhm.
So they had those 3 categories. So they kept the never started people the same.
Okay.
And they only in 2020 did a lottery for the veterans and everybody else. So again, couldn't enter that one. So come 2021, even though they extended the qualifier for a year, my last qualifier was Fat Dog in 2017.
Oh,
I didn't have a qualifier. And I worked as hard as hell, and I couldn't. So 2021, my entry to High Lonesome rolled over. I timed out at 50K. Then I was like, okay, because that was high elevation, and I really worked for it, even though I volunteered at Hard Rock that year. And I remember being at the aid station, and I worked at Engineer Aid Station. So that one, we have to drive in up to Engineer Pass. We hike everything down, not
crap.
quite 2 miles, and then we hike everything up.
Holy moly.
And I remember just doing that hiking and sitting there at the aid station going, I think I'm going to have to be a spectator now at Hard Rock. What am I thinking? I can't do this. Because I wasn't even certain I could finish High Lonesome.
Oh my God. What's the gain on High Lonesome? It's pretty massive too.
It is. I want to say at the time I was calling it Hard Rock Light and not meaning to look down my nose at the race directors of High Lonesome. Not quite as much as Hard Rock. And then the elevation, like the highest point, you go by a 13er. Like you don't quite summit over a 13er. I mean, it still is definitely
brutal.
Colorado run.
Yeah. Yeah, big mountain.
And where your sustained elevation isn't quite the same as Hard Rock, but you're living in Boise.
Yeah, you're feeling it.
And so I didn't finish that. And I was like, well, that's okay. I got Wasatch. Like, I can do Wasatch.
How many times have you done Wasatch?
Well, I only have one finish. I've started Wasatch, I think 5 times.
It's brutal.
And I only have one finish.
Oh,
My very first time I started it, I learned a lot. I'd already had like a small number of 100-mile finishes. So every year I hadn't gotten into Hard Rock, I always tried to do something to kind of challenge myself because I started applying for Hard Rock way before I should have. Like, meaning if I had gotten in my first or second year of applying, that would have been
trouble.
Stupid.
What did I get myself into?
And so it was like just to boost my confidence. So that year I was supposed to do 600s.
Oh my gosh.
So I'd already done Salt Flats, Bighorn, somebody else. And then I had Wasatch, or I guess it was Wasatch. Then it was supposed to be I Am Tough and Javelina.
Okay.
And that was I Am Tough's first year. And I had met Brandy and Jeremy, and it was super excited for them on their race and the whole McCall thing. So yeah, I dropped at Wasatch at about 50 miles. That whole year I'd kind of had foot issues where I would get these hot spots underneath the balls of my feet, and my feet were so callous that I wasn't getting blisters, but I was getting like blisters below the callus.
Oh my gosh.
And it would be painful.
I bet.
And I just remembered in my head getting to Big Water and just going, I'm done, because I was really looking forward to I Am Tough. And I already had my costume together for Javelina.
I've seen some of the pictures that you sent. Is you are always wearing a smile for one, but you absolutely have fun with it. I think it was
Give me an excuse
blue
to dress up.
I don't know if it was a fairy outfit or something.
So that actually was my costume for the first Javelina. That was the year that Caballo Blanco, Micah True from Born to Run, had passed. He had passed earlier in that year, and so I was trying to do this like LED desert theme kind of thing on the skirt, and then I just happened to have like fairy wings that had LED lights on them and glow in the dark paint.
You mentioned Born to Run. I saw you also done Born to Run and the Tarawera.
Yeah, the Copper Canyon.
We could talk for hours on all these races that you've done. It's crazy.
So I remember reading about the Copper Canyon run. It first came out in, I don't know if you remember, Runner's World magazine. Christopher McDougal did an article in Runner's World magazine on it.
Yeah.
And that was about the time we were moving to Boise. And I remember reading it just going, oh my God, that sounds so cool. And I had only done up to 50Ks at that time. I had done 50Ks for a number of years. I guess not a number of years, but 2003, and this was 2006 we were moving. So 2007 was the first time I had moved up to the 50-mile range. But this was like 2006 going, I haven't even done a 50-miler.
How did you, not to derail that thought, but how did you get into the distances in the first place? How did you hear about ultras, and what was your first one?
So my first one was the Siskiyou Outback. So we lived in Ashland, Oregon. I ran, so back a little bit. So I got married when I was 18 years old. I got divorced when I was 28. It was just not the right person. And it took me a really long time to go, it's okay that somebody is holding you back to leave them so that you can move on.
Yeah.
And so once I finally was like, you know what? I need to get out of here. So I was in Central California, Santa Margarita, which is a little bit inland, but a little bit north of San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
And was looking to go back to school. I wanted to get into the Fish and Wildlife has a wildlife forensics lab. Only lab of its kind in the whole world in Ashland, Oregon.
Wow.
And I really wanted to get into wildlife forensics, but I guess I had thought, well, forensics would be okay. But really, I want to do wildlife forensics.
What got you interested in that?
So I was going to school at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo. My degree was going to be in wildlife biology. And I was working part-time at a veterinary clinic and was just cleaning up the People magazines. And on the back of it was an article about this lab.
Interesting. So that's what drove it.
And it just had kind of stuck with me. And I was getting to a point where I was working as a chemist at this company called Denmat. And they make
the story just gets deeper.
Their claim to fame was they made Rembrandt toothpaste.
Oh, crazy.
If you remember that.
Oh, yeah, totally.
One of the first teeth whitening or tooth over-the-counter stuff. And it was owned by this dentist. And he was just really cheap. And I mean, this was in like 1995 or 6. I was making $7.50 an hour.
As a chemist?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I had heard before my 1-year review, people saying that were like worked on the line, you know, that they would get like 10 cent, 25 cent raise. And it was just kind of like, what? And I was
Does not compute.
No, and I was hearing all these people who just weren't really happy with their lot in life, like, you know, work-wise. And I just kept doing this.
But they're still doing it day in and day out.
And I just kept thinking, and this was at the time that my marriage was falling apart too. But before that, it was what kind of spurred it was really I wanted something more.
Did you have kids?
No.
Okay.
Fortunately. Before that, I had really already realized that I'm not really in a good relationship. And so I had purposely, like my ex-husband and I had never really talked about kids. He had kids from a prior marriage. We really weren't very good about trying to keep up on child support for them. You know, so he wasn't like doing this, I want to have kids thing. So it was kind of, I was in the driver's seat. And I had realized, you know what? Okay. I don't feel like I can leave this person. I felt at the time, this is the decision you made. Now deal with it.
Yep.
You know, so I
totally
didn't do anything, but I wasn't about to bring somebody else into it.
It's almost like going into it, you get married once, no matter what, as hard as it may get, you've got to just work your way through it because that's what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
And when you hit that point where you realize life doesn't turn out like everybody thinks it's supposed to, say that in quotes.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get your mind around what it would be like to make that shift. And, you know, you feel like you're being selfish that, well, what if I do this for me? How does it impact everybody else? And anyway, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Fortunately, no kids involved kind of thing.
A little bit of a clean break then.
Yep. And so then that's when I started exploring, okay, well, what do I have to do to get into forensics? Okay, I can either get a forensics degree or a chemistry degree. And so at the time I was juggling. It was Southern Oregon University, which is in Ashland, Oregon, a chemistry degree. Or, and again, we were still married. My in-laws lived in Westminster, Colorado. It was like, or I could go get a forensics degree. And that's kind of what started it. Was at that point, my ex-husband was selling drugs for us to survive because he wasn't working. And that's kind of what finally did it, was he was off on, you know, a
doing this
buy.
thing.
And it was just like sitting there in the driveway by myself going,
oh my God,
this person is totally holding me back. I have so much more to offer.
Yeah.
I need to get out of here. And then it was kind of like through the whole struggle of me wanting to go somewhere else, to go back to school. It was like literally he told my neighbor, she wants to take me away from this. She kind of looked at him going, what is she taking you away from?
Yeah, right. What are you going to lose here?
I mean, that's kind of where we were at. Was we were just both wanted two totally different things. And that was what kind of woke me up.
So when you were able to break, you know, and I don't know, I'm guessing it might have been a difficult separation to break free from that. But when you finally did, what are you thinking? What are you feeling at that point? Is it like just, oh my God, I can do anything?
Pretty much. I remember my dad, you know, my parents got divorced when I was 6. And I do remember my dad telling me that it's okay to feel guilty. And my biggest thing was I definitely felt free, but I also had this, not guilt, but dread. Oh my God, I wasted 10 years of my life in allowing myself to be in the wrong. And I really, that was my push, was just to get over, you know what? You did. But there's nothing you can do about it now. The only thing you can do is move forward from here.
What was the catalyst for that change of headspace? Were you doing deep work, or was it just
No.
the light switch went off? It's like, I need to do something.
Yeah. I mean, it was a light switch that went off just to say, again, this person's holding me back.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until afterwards, the first person I had dated had done this whole thing of, when it comes down to it, you are the only person that's there for you.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think I had begun to feel that before. And it was like, no, this is me and I have to do this for me.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yep. That's a great point, because time is not waiting for any of us.
Yeah. So I ended up in Ashland because it was going to be a heck of a lot easier to move all by myself from Central Coast, California to just over the border, versus Westminster, Colorado, knowing that in-laws are still there and that whole thing. So in Ashland, I was there for about a year, and I met who's my husband now. He had introduced me to the Hash House Harriers in Ashland.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
Hash House Harriers are like worldwide.
The OGs of running and running groups. No, were you running or physically active before all this?
Well, people ask me when they did meet me after I started doing ultras, have you always been a runner? And when did you start running? And I always say I've always run. I ran track when I was in elementary, middle school.
Okay.
In high school, my freshman year, me and my friend, we just didn't want to do PE class. So we show up on the first day of sign up for whatever after school sports. And I think the choices were basketball. Still to this day, I've never really
just
played
not
basketball.
your jam.
No. And it was, I can't remember what the other one, there was 3. It was basketball. Maybe it was tennis. Basketball, tennis, and cross country. And I had always considered myself a short distance runner. And I just kind of looked at my friend. I'm like, I don't know anything about cross country. And she was just, I don't know why she went with this at age 13, 14, already a big chested girl. And she had asthma. So what we ended up doing was we would smoke pot before the meets because supposedly it relieved her asthma.
Oh, geez. And just go out and get lost in it. That's funny.
And she ended up having to go live with her dad in Las Vegas during that school year.
Didn't work out.
So my sophomore year, I continued with cross country because I did track. I didn't have her with me to do track my freshman year. And it turned out I hated track. I think it was partly I realized in elementary school, I was the fastest kid.
Everything
in middle
changed.
school, I started to realize you're pretty good, but you're not fast. And then I definitely realized that in high school. Versus with cross country, again, I wasn't the fast person, but I was much more in that middle beginning pack, which kind of made me feel good about my progress.
Yeah.
So I did cross country my sophomore year. And then at that time, the friends I was hanging out with, well, they were going home after school to go party.
Oh, okay. You're missing out.
Yeah. So that pretty much stopped my regular running. But I still always, even as a kid and even as I was going through my divorce, I started running again on a treadmill. I had access to this gym. And that was it. Running has always been my
outlet.
Just my mind goes off. And I used to say, I can answer all the world's problems. I have a solution to all the world's problems after I go for a run.
Yep.
I don't do anything about them. I forget about them. But
yeah, right. But in the moment.
Yeah. And running has always been that way for me. So when I got to Ashland, I was back to running, but it was really weird that, and I would reflect back on this. It was still, again, on the treadmill. And oh my God.
Even though you're in Ashland.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And it turned out that the year that I started running the year my husband came to Ashland, he graduated with a PhD from University of Utah. He was teaching at Southern Oregon University.
Oh, okay.
And I was going to the fitness facility at the university.
To run
and there
on
were
the treadmill.
2 treadmills to run on the treadmill and do a workout like other weight stuff. And again, just not serious, whatever I kind of felt like. But it was for sure to get on the treadmill. There were 2 treadmills and one was always out of order. And I didn't realize I was making this conscious effort on if I got here at this time, it would be available. So if I was too early, it wasn't available. If it was too late, it wasn't available. And I didn't realize I was trying to kick out the too late person, which happened to be my husband now.
Oh, interesting. How interesting.
And so we had actually met. He ended up being my housemate's advisor. And that was it. He's like,
you're ruining my workout time.
You're the one who's so it was like, oh, and still just didn't think of it, still got in my usual, time, got on the treadmill. And then that was when he walked in and he's like, do you want to go for a run outside?
Wow.
So we just went through a run, like through the neighborhood. And that's like when it came all back to me of that's what I used to do as a kid.
Just run outside and get lost in it.
I grew up in Southern California where my mom and I moved to a town called El Toro when I was 10. It was kind of like this area here. And it used to be, it was known for its, don't know if it's Air Force or Army, I'm probably getting it wrong, but base. It was known for its base. And that's pretty much all that was out there. And then in the late 70s, housing started to develop there.
Take it over.
And so we had lived in a planned community. I was in a town called Lake Forest, which isn't, if you're anybody familiar with the area, there's Mission Viejo and there is Lake Mission Viejo, which pretty sure that's a real lake. But a lot of these other planned divisions had like these man-made lakes. And so we had this man-made lake, and where my middle school was, they still had like these huge stands of eucalyptus, walking trails that connected the different housing developments. So, I mean, you still, even though you were running in neighborhoods, you had this sense of nature.
Yeah.
And then in Ashland, that's it. We were just running through these neighborhoods in the dark that, again, Ashland's very much like Boise in that range of housing and the age of housing is all over the place. And you still very much have established landscapes, in these neighborhoods. And yeah, I was just like, this is what I used to do. And then he had already been to 2 hash runs. And so he invited me to a hash run. And it turned out that a lot of the hashers in Ashland were at that time OG ultra
runners, yeah.
Yep. A lot of them had already done Western States. And again, this is like 1998, 99.
That's when it's still totally fringe.
Hearing people talk about, duct taping Gatorade bottles to their hands.
Right. Crazy.
And there was one guy, he was already retired at the time. He was a retired PE teacher. He had a book out. He had done the PCT in 3 summers while he was still teaching.
Oh, wow.
And so he had, Blood, Sweat, and Tears on the PCT.
I've heard of that. I've heard of that one.
Bob Hotel. And he was, he was just this old crotchety man, but he was funny and down to earth. And yeah, it's just like an amazing community.
And you're just in the early hotbed of it.
Yeah. And so I can't remember what year it was. I had done my first marathon. It was Lake Tahoe Marathon. Finished it. And I remember my husband ran it with me. We were dating still at the time though. And we were like at mile 23 and he's got this hop in his step and he's like, so when do you want to do your first 50 miler? And I just remember my feet hurt. And I mean, I knew I would finish, but it was like, I knew we still probably had like another 45 minutes, an hour before finishing, and it's just like, and so then fast forward, we had our first daughter in 2002. And so she was born in July. That following year, it was like, I don't know, what do you think about doing another marathon? So we did Avenue of the Giants. And I remember doing that and it was really slow. She was about 10 months old and he ran with me again and it was slow. And at that time, Siskiyou Outback had already started and they had always done a 15K or a 50K. The first year of SOB was 1999.
Okay.
And so this was 2003. And that was when I remember looking at him going, what do you think about the 50K this year? Because if I'm going to be slow, hey, I at least got bragging rights.
Yeah.
Versus I get down another slow 15K. Woohoo!
You want to get the distance.
And so they had an hour early start. So I did the hour early start. And I remember coming around, it's sort of a lollipop loop. And so you're kind of like around that top part of that lollipop. And at that time, I had picked up some like older women who now I'm saying older women, they're probably my age, give or take like five years. But at 35, I just remember going, this is so cool. And I want to still be doing that when I'm their age.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of what did it.
Interesting.
But at the time, I just stuck with the 50K level just because that's primarily what there was. I never had this burning issue of, what's beyond this
I was going to
distance?
ask you that. So does it just suddenly turn into eyeballing 100 or what's your next race after that?
Well, and so it was 50K and it wasn't until we moved to Boise that I had heard about Frank Hansen's 50 miler. He used to do from Fort Boise to up to Schaefer Butte.
Yes.
And back. And a friend of mine from Ashland, who happened to be one of the race directors at SOP, She knew Teresa Scott, who had moved to Eagle from Corvallis the year before. And had done that race.
Interesting.
And so we moved after it had happened for the year. And so that was it. It was like, okay, I guess that's what I do next year. And then at that same time, this other friend of mine from Ashland who had started running a couple years after me, so she had done the SOB as her first 50K. Her husband was the ultra runner. And he'd already done Western States. She had crewed for him. So she was familiar with what it is, but had never really run long distance.
Gotcha.
And was finding success. She was pretty fast. She had done, I think she had done Where's Waldo? Or it was either Where's Waldo or the PCT 50 miler. When we moved to Boise. And I just remember doing this, you advanced before me?
You got to up the game now.
Yeah. And so, it was just natural, I guess, after that I did Frank Hansen's 50 miler and it was like, this wasn't that much more than a 50K. I mean, I was out there longer, but it wasn't like, oh my God.
Oh, you get it done and then you realize that I can do this.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
No. And so that same year I did Where's Waldo? I did Where's Waldo twice. My first year, my friend and I did the hour early start and somebody had messed with the markings.
Oh.
And so we went the wrong way and we were, following behind this guy who all of a sudden the guy turns around and that's what was so funny. So Craig Thornley, who's the director of Western States, he was still Where's Waldo race director. This is before Western States. It was his brother who all of a sudden turned around and he knew my friend Annie and he goes, Annie, we're going the wrong way. You have to go to this aid station, but you have to do like all of this stuff before you get to it. We were approaching the aid station from the back. And that's what finally made him realize we're going the wrong way. So turn around, we run down this hill. I do everything I can to keep up with them. And we get to the T, and by that time the markings have been fixed. And so it was just kind of like, okay, I can't keep up with you guys anymore. I let them both go.
But you're back on course now.
Yeah, but I'm back on course. And I just remember now finally getting to that aid station we were supposed to be heading to. Oh, my God. Just feeling awful. And I didn't have a light. Like all you had to do is if you got to the aid station that I was heading to, Twin Sisters, that was the last cutoff. If you made it to there, you were golden, right. But you had the potential of you might finish in the dark. I didn't have a light. I'd never really run in the dark.
Oh, geez.
So I had all this doubt coming into my head. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, and my friend Annie's got to be hours ahead of me. And this just sucks. And I look up and there used to be this guy who would hang out on this slope before the aid station on horseback. And he's sitting there and he's got her on the horse. She's like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and drop. And I'm just like,
what the hell?
So I make it to the aid station and I had about 10 or 15 minutes to spare.
Oh, nice.
But that was it.
Probably surprised yourself.
I was, but at the same token, this was early and, this was 2007. So not a whole lot of experience. And that's all it was. I just had total self-doubt. And I'm like, I'm dropping. Because I was just like, I don't know what this running in the dark thing is going to be. And I know I'm not going fast because I think I still had probably like 20-ish miles left, so then I had to sit and wait for the aid station to close before I could be walked down to where there would be a car to take me to the finish.
Are you second guessing your decision at any of those
Totally.
points?
The whole time walking down this steep hill to get to the car, I'm like, my legs feel fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just like, so that was like the big thing of, you know what? Sometimes you do need to sit and rest. And
you don't have to just keep moving the entire time.
No. So, at least I did learn a lot with that DNF.
What's your favorite aid station food?
So I really do like instant mashed potatoes. First time I ever had those was at the first Pocatello 50 up at where Scout Mountain was, the Scout Mountain aid station. And I just remember their whole aid I think it was a combination of everything. It was getting chewed up by bugs. I was feeling shitty. I come around this corner. I wasn't expecting them to be there. All of a sudden, it's this huge oasis, and they had instant mashed potatoes and bug spray.
Oh, nice. You're in heaven at that point.
And it was like enough to help me get up over Scout Mountain.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, it is still something I keep in, today I'll keep like a little bag in my pocket because it wasn't until I aid station captain the South Scout aid station for South Scout Scout ultra marathons now. And it wasn't until last year, I'd always someone came in, can I have some instant mashed potatoes. I'm like, yeah, I'll get some hot water going. I just don't have hot water. Oh no, you can just pour regular water in there. And I'm like,
what?
Can? It doesn't quite taste as good, but it actually still dissolve.
Yeah. It's like eating cold chicken noodle soup. You know, take it out of the can. It doesn't matter at that point. You just got to get it down.
So it was just like, oh my gosh, this works. So that's why I just carry a little packet just in case, regardless of if I can get hot water or not. And
you got it. That's your get out of jail free card when you're really starting to bonk and suffer.
That or I don't do gels. I haven't done gels for years. I
had to get away from for the first few years I was racing. That's what everybody did, and so I'd try to just keep powering them down. Yep. It just turned me inside out.
Yep.
To where if instead of those I'd eat gummy bears, I'll just eat handfuls of gummy bears or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah, pretty much anything whole food wise. At Bigfoot, I had these scratch bars, and I liked them. But it was just like, I don't even know if I'd gotten into it. It was day 2. It tasted like plastic.
Oh, no.
So now what I do is I at least eat something every hour.
Yeah.
And that really
makes a huge difference.
Helps me because I would usually wait to start eating until I was hungry in an ultra.
And then you're already behind.
And then that would catch up to me the next day. So it'd be like going into about hour 28, 30. When it's like, my stomach doesn't want anything.
Yeah.
But yet I still know I'm still going to be out here for like another 4 or 5 hours.
So what do you do? What are you taking?
Well,
at that
and
point?
so that's what I'm saying is, but eating every hour is completely avoided that.
Nice.
Bigfoot took me 103 hours and my stomach
was
rock solid. The one thing, those one bars started tasting like plastic.
Yeah.
And my bag, we would go through that and I would still make sure I had enough food for like the number of hours I thought that block would take me. And I was just switching stuff out. Okay, we got to get rid of these.
Yeah.
And then what can I replace it with? And what I really like now is, I think they're called Nuka, Noka. They're touted as these little smoothies, but it's kind of like in the baby food like pouches, squeezy pouches.
Okay.
And they're usually 2 different flavors. So like a mango and a something and a coconut and something else, they have a variety of flavors. Goes down super easy. Squeeze it. There's not a whole lot of calories or carbs to it, which is probably its only drawback. But I lived off those at Bigfoot. I mean, I had brought like 2 cases. And so I just supplemented with that. It's just easy to eat. Yeah.
I think once you actually get something in your stomach, it's easier to get more, and it's just getting that first bite down. And I'm with you. You get to a point where you're that far into a run, and it's hard to just chew a bar. Yep. It's just the same consistency, and it just hurts in your mouth.
Yeah, yeah. What I also learned was from my OG ultra runner, I mean, it's like, I haven't quite done it, but he would get this cup of water and peanut butter and jelly and like dunk it in the water.
Oh, yeah. It's like those competitive eaters eating hot dogs. They get it wet and just shove it in their face. It goes down easier.
I can't quite, but I have definitely used the water.
Yeah.
Like the water in my mouth to help swallow as something. And when I really, my gag reflex, swallowing reflex isn't quite there.
Yeah.
But it's like my coach for the strength training, she's really, got in with, it's a collective group of coaches.
Okay.
So she's got other people she can talk with. So as I started doing these long runs and as she was with me on them, I was like, you know what? I want you to take in 25 grams of carbs every hour. And again, it's not meticulous. Like, is it really 25?
Right.
To me,
At
it's
least
like,
something
it's
close.
food. Am I taking food in every hour? And that's really helped. And salt stick just every hour. And I've just upped it. To where I used to be 1 tablet every hour. And any times, depending on where I'm at, it's either 1 or 2 tablets, or I'll mix it in with these Theracaps.
Yeah, right there too. Is staying consistent on getting in the sodium.
Yeah.
It makes a world of difference.
Yeah.
So when does it expand to where you get into Bigfoot? I mean, you're going from 50K to 100K, and then now you're doing 200s, multi-days. Is there a long-term goal that you're shooting towards with this, or it's just just the experience?
So I didn't finish Where's Waldo the first year, so went back for redemption the second year. And at that point, my husband had met Dennis Ahern through yoga, and Dennis had just done PCT 50.
Okay.
And so and I hadn't met him yet, but it was through conversation, through him going, oh, so when's she going to do her first 100? And there was talk of Olga King, who used to be part of the PCT 50, had in her eyes, she wanted to do 100-miler through there. Okay. And that was the one and done, only happened 100 in the Hood, which Mountain Lakes is kind of a rendition of that. But we had heard about 100 in the Hood, and I just kind of went, before I even met Dennis, it was like, well, you tell him if he'll do it, I'll do it.
Nice.
Kind of thing. And again, that was just all of a sudden graduating up to that distance and running through the night. So running an ultra was just like, this is so awesome. Just I did this whole thing under my own power. And then going from that 50K revelation that I felt the first time I ran my first 50K to the 100-miler, and I ran through the night. I mean, I remember I had a pacer. I had been at that point with like a couple of other runners, and we had encountered, I'm pretty sure it was Tetsuro. He was asleep at the side of the trail. And it was like freezing temperatures. And it was just like, oh, he shouldn't be out here. So like we encourage him to come to the aid station with us. I'm pretty sure he did. But I mean, just that whole of, you're going to sleep on the side of the trail?
It's crazy to think about. But then once you do this, it goes to the next and goes to the next. So you've done the multi-days, and what's the next big challenge? Obviously you got Hard Rock coming up, but if you've done 200s and you've done multi-days, do you have something farther that you want to do, or now is it just kind of mixing up the experiences and just getting out for the joy of it?
Yeah. I mean, I've treated a lot of the ultras I've done as ability to go experience some place that not a whole lot of people get to.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I did this under my own power.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember doing the Monument Valley 100-miler. He would have a 50-miler that was contained within the Monument Valley. But for the 100-milers, we were able to go through an area where it was Navajo land, and you weren't technically, I mean, he got permission to allow us to go through there, because normally people weren't allowed over there unless they had a Navajo guide with them, whether that be on horseback or they did do a lot of vehicle tours to see some of the ruins. And it was things like that. It was just like, normally people don't get out here. And I do reflect back to my mom a lot when I would go like scale a peak. She wasn't a super outdoor person. I mean, she got out. She played tennis for a while, in her younger years and so on. But she
Not
also
to
had
the degree,
asthma.
obviously, that you're doing.
And she also had asthma. I can remember us being in like Utah skiing and, her getting out of breath easy. And she never understood my running. It'd be like, don't blow out your knees, or
all the things you hear.
And she was very much of that diet culture. So, I mean, I got a little bit of body shaming of, are you sure you can do this running thing? Because I wasn't like this thin, lanky runner. And again, that sticks with me. So yeah, that kind of hurts, Mom.
Yeah.
But again, that's the culture.
Right.
But I would reflect on, you know what? I'm seeing something that
most people will never see.
Most people don't see. And I know she could never, because I didn't have a great relationship with her. But that would be in my head of, oh my God, if I could convey how being on the top of Handy's Peak, 14,000 feet, how awesome this is.
And you can never capture it in a picture.
No, I don't take very many pictures.
I was going to ask you about that, because you'd mentioned you're not super active on social media, but do you take pictures when you're out doing these things, or are you just fully immersed in the experience?
I'm more immersed in the experience.
Love that.
And I run alone a lot. But like if I run with April Wilbur, oh my God, I'll have the thing totally documented.
Oh, yeah.
Which I remember saying at Bigfoot, you better appreciate me for all the pictures I've taken.
Oh, geez.
Because one of my things when I was out of high school, I wanted to be a photographer. That was like my first career path. But, the teacher would at that time we had to turn in negatives with our stuff. And he just ripped my stuff to shreds. And so at 18 years old, just ripped me of my confidence.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, okay, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
So I think I still kind of have that when with a phone, you don't quite get the capture, the depth of what you really see with your eyes to where I still think it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily stop to take the picture. Part of me just wants to keep going, so I'm not taking the slow down thing to take the picture, but it's just so immersed in my brain.
It's locked in there. I love that, because I've been trying to do more of that as I race less and just get out on adventures more, because I'm hit and miss. Sometimes, depending on where my head's at, I take a lot more pictures when I'm out, because it's kind of the same thing as with family and things. I want to show them the places that I'm going and how amazing these opportunities are to see things that most people won't see. But yeah, the picture never does it justice, and then I kind of lose favor of that and go back to just getting lost in the experience.
I mean, back to Monument Valley, there's no way a phone would have done it justice, because it was dark.
Yeah.
That weekend was my birthday weekend, so we had fallen over to the next day. It was my birthday, and it was coming over in the dark. you could still see the shadow of a monument and the full moon was rising. And also between the camera wouldn't have gotten it just because of my perception and point of view, but it was like the whole close encounter thing. You know, it was just like you thought you saw that whole mountain that he was trying to build and you see the moon coming up over it and you're like,
just surreal.
And it's my stinking birthday today.
How awesome.
You know, and if I could pull that out as a thread and give it to you, I can vividly still have that memory.
I was going to ask you, out of all the places that you've gone, races you've done, other adventures, what's your favorite? I can only imagine it's hard to say.
It's hard to say. They're just all there. And it's all there cumulatively of, again, a lot of people aren't there.
Yeah.
You know, just don't see it just because they don't do the distances. And again, when anybody says, oh, you know, when they find out, you know, the distances I've run, it's like, I might do like a mile.
Yeah,
well,
I don't drive a car that far.
There's that too, but they're like, oh yeah, I run, but not that much. And I'm like, you know what, just get out.
Yeah, I always have to remind people, a mile's a long way. 2 miles is a long way. It's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 100 miles.
No.
It's just, for us, we're kind of on the fringe, and whatever the distance are, we just love to get out, and that's what we like to do. Climb something tall. I love doing it to get the view. If there's the most direct route, I don't care what it looks like. That's the way I'm going to go.
And I think that's it. It's like I'm a view person, but I'm not a city view person.
Yeah.
Like I can remember my husband saying he's got like friends in Salt Lake that they have this magnificent house that has a view of the valley. And I'm like, whatever, it's lights.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Tiff and I, we talk about that a lot too, is it's just not the same. You got to get away and see the nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said you didn't really have a favorite memory, but out of all the races you've done so far, obviously Hard Rock's coming up. That's going to be a unique experience, but do you have a favorite race that you've done so far? I'd
have to say, you know, it's a tie at this point. And again, that's always going to change based on, you know, I would have to say
on the day.
Yeah. I'd have to say it's a tie with Bigfoot just because I do remember finishing that and going, I stinking did this.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I had all these speeches prepared in my head for what I would say when I got to that point, and April was running me into the finish. And so we had already been together for like all day. And as we were approaching it, it's like, nope, I want to wait till I'm there. You know, because it's like you enter into this school. So, I mean, I literally waited until we were entering the parking lot. And it was just like, I stinking did this.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's as you've explained this one and you've explained some of these others, I can see you're having an emotional reaction. It's like it's taking you back there again. What's triggering?
Yeah, it was just raw. And so that's why I think before that I was going to answer Bigfoot 120.
Yeah.
Because I remember descending the last climb. That area was so beautiful. It was very reminiscent of the San Juans, but there was none of that like mining scars. So it was just, this is what it must be like when nobody 100 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, my oldest daughter is 22. When she was a year old, my husband and I and another couple and my daughter, we biked the Oregon coast. So the 101 just for the state of Oregon. And there were 4 of us, and so we would bring a vehicle along with us. So 3 of us would ride, someone would drive, and then sometimes my daughter was in the bike trailer. Or if it was just kind of like a really busy section or like a section you'd have to go through a tunnel, then she'd be in the car seat with whoever drove.
Yeah.
And so the one day, I remember coming up over our last pass. So it was towards the Oregon California side. I can't remember the town. And at that day, I think it was me, my husband, and the other guy. So typically what happened is they were gone. I was just out there by myself. But I just remember coming up over this pass, and it was like, if you could blot out Highway 101, it's like thinking that's what it must have looked like to Lewis and Clark when they came to the coast.
So a lot of times I'll be chatting with ladies, and there's that concern of, I'm out there by myself. I would love to go do these things, but I'm scared of being in the wilderness by myself or going through these, you know, does that ever cross your mind? Or is it, I don't give a shit, I'm going to get out and and do this?
You know, not so much.
Or are you packing heat?
No. I mean, I've had a couple of incidences, not so much that were like really scary because it's all in my head. You know, I've let my head run.
It's the story you tell yourself.
You know, So I went out to Colorado to do trail work for Hard Rock. I had that whole week in between, and then I was going to work the aid station. So my whole plan was, I'm going to do soft rock. Come on, people. And of course, nobody would commit. So I was like, forget it. I don't care. I'm going to do it by myself. Well, then it kind of came down to doing it by myself, not so much for my safety as a woman and my ability. All of a sudden, I started to second guess myself.
Oh,
because
whether you could do it?
Because part of it was ideally what you do is you stay in Lake City. Well, that requires a shuttle. And then you stay in Ouray until you ride. Well, I was doing this. Well, I have this amount of time. I'm going to try and do it in like 3 days so I can finish to still be ready on Friday to help with the aid station. Well, that means I'm going to have to camp. Okay, that's fine. I'll pack. I'll pack as light as I can, but I'll have a pack, not a running pack on. And then all of a sudden it was like, can I do that many miles on foot?
With that pack and that weight?
With that pack in a day? And then it was like...
doubt starts setting in.
Yeah, and then it was like, I have some backcountry experience, but it was just like, oh, I'm not too worried about bears or anything like that, but there's marmots out there, and I'm going to be packing my food.
Yeah. Yep.
So, that kind of thing, that whole self-doubt was like, and then I realized there was a guy, he's actually released a really cool video. He happened to do soft rock with a bunch of friends. He's a filmmaker out of, I think, Canada. And they finished before 4th of July. So he was out there before, just kind of done, but like putting out little teasers on Instagram while I was out there. So yeah, what he did is they camped in Cataract Gulch, Sherman's aid station.
Okay.
So they had a support crew, but they had the vehicle there. So they camped, threw all that stuff there, and then they did Ouray till you ride Silverton back over there. And so then it was like, oh, that's what I should have done. I could have driven over there, just flat out left my car.
Right.
And then done the whole thing. And I'm like,
hindsight.
Because that was the whole thing was, I think I'm going to have enough tickets to get in if I, at that time I hadn't finished Bigfoot, but it was like, if I actually finish Bigfoot, so if I do it in the direction of this year and, yeah. So I really haven't, I've seen most of the course. I've seen probably 80% of the course.
I imagine how just amazing that we wasn't even going to put it into words.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what the experience is going to be.
Yeah. My total intention is to finish. But again, I'm giving myself grace of I'm putting the work in to finish.
Yeah.
But whatever's going to happen is whatever's going to happen. And I'm going to enjoy every step of however far I get.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. You kind of learn to appreciate things more the older you get.
Yes.
And I really think, my intention is to tell Dale when I finish at the Rock, thanks for making me wait so long to get in, because
it's going to mean that much more to you.
So much more than if I had gotten in 10 years ago.
So what happens after this? Do you see yourself continuing to do these big mountain, long distance, multi-days as long as you possibly can?
Oh, yeah.
That's all.
So as I was going through menopause and like really slowing down and trying to do this, I wasn't ready to hang my tennis shoes up 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm forecasting, looking at it ahead of me going, damn it, there's still women out there who are 10, 15 years older than I am doing this.
Getting it done.
So...
Yep. There's no end in sight then.
Yeah. You had mentioned Born to Run. When I did that, I went there to specifically, so Micah True had passed and I had just done Copper Canyon. So there was a group of us who I had run Copper Canyon with. Some of them were from California. One guy was from Colorado, and they were already anticipating being this was like the second or third running of Born to Run. They were already planning on being there. And so it was definitely, it kind of turned in this memorial tribute for him.
That's awesome.
But there was various distances. I was just doing a 50K because that was the year I was going to do a bunch of hundreds. There was a woman who was doing the 100K, and she was my mom's age. So at that time, she was like in her late 70s. My mom passed a couple years ago, just shy of 90. But it was just the fact of her husband's out there, and that it was 10-mile laps. And so her husband's out there supporting her, and he had this old ratty-tatted, Hard Rock 100 hat on.
Nice.
And it was like, this just like was her day kind of thing. And it took her, I remember her finishing just after sunrise the next day. So it took her not quite 24 hours.
But she's getting it done.
To do 100K. And so at that time, she was in her 70s.
That's
I'm
awesome.
like, yeah. I realize at some point I am going to either have to hang my hat up at 100 milers or
you do solo efforts where
Exactly.
you're not racing the clock.
Yeah. And I'm probably going to have to, if I want to do a distance, because every distance had that 36-hour cutoff.
Oh, okay.
That's why she was able to get the 100K in. And I might have to resign myself to that. And then
you still get the time out there.
Yeah. And then we happened, because I was in Facebook at the time, because this was still early, like 2011. And so I remember still following her, just going, is she still around? And there's pictures of her doing the Moab 50K, and she's got these two hunky guys posing to like help her over the slick rock. And
now that you're saying that, I think I can actually see that picture in my head. I think I know what you're talking about. Okay, yeah.
Only because she was my mom's age, and I think she started getting less active in Facebook. I want to assume she's probably passed. But other than my maternal grandmother, who passed of diabetes. She was a Christian Scientist, so didn't believe in doctors. The women on both sides of my mother and father's family have lived past late 80s.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm going to be 57 this year. I got at least 30 years on me. And if I can still be out there in some form of moving,
you're going to.
I'm going to.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to ask, which kind of ties into the love of being out there and doing it, is you're very involved with giving back. Because I've seen you at other races where you've been out sweeping courses, and like you said, you work the aid station for Scout Mountain. What's it mean to you to give back in that capacity?
I think it was the second time I did Where's Waldo. I remember hitting this backside, and the aid station was, the people working there were not runners. They were like cowboy people,
Gotcha.
like, just meaning they were outdoor people,
Yeah.
whether it be, horses or ATVs or whatever. They're just
outdoor
runners.
folks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I just remember doing this. Oh my God, they're giving their day up for us. And that was the first thing that clicked, was this wouldn't happen
If it wasn't
without
for
other
volunteers.
people.
Yeah.
And if this is something that I love to do, I better be a part of that giving back.
Yeah.
Because I need to be there. And that's what I always say to somebody that comes into an aid station I'm working, and they thank me for being there. And it's like, you know what? I wouldn't be here if you weren't here.
That's a great point.
And so, yeah, it's just a matter of giving back. And I started being the captain for South Scout Ultras when I finished the first year they did the 100-miler. And I finished that. And I was like, I've now done every single distance between Pocatello and Scout that you've had. And my nemesis is South Scout.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
I love that course and I hate that course.
Mhm.
And I always blow up if I'm going to blow up at about there. And I just remember looking at Luke going, count me in. I'll be the aid station for South Scout.
Nice.
Because I'm now done. I can give back to this place. And
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I need to get back there
and
again,
so
too.
some years I do regret when I see the runners coming in going, maybe one more year.
Right.
But no,
You've done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, for the person that you are now, what advice would you give the 18-year-old you?
I was in a different headspace.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? I don't even think the 18-year-old listened to me.
That's funny. I don't think, actually, now that you say that, I don't think my 18-year-old self would listen either.
I mean, part of me is I like who I am now, and I've liked who I am now for like the last 20 years. I like the spot I've been in. And it's taken all of my experiences and my missteps and the figuring out what to do after the missteps or take advantage of the good decisions.
Yeah.
It's all my experiences that has made me who I am here. So it's like, I don't even think I would take the chance to go back and talk to him.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, no, you got to go through this stuff in order for it to happen.
To get to where you're at now.
Yeah. But I think it just clicked on me going, you know what? I was just so stubborn. I probably wouldn't have listened. But I think I probably would just say, you know what? It's going to work out.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
I would have been hiding behind the dumpster, hiding from myself. Be like, is that guy coming after me again? Well, so let me ask you a question, because you went through a career change and you went into teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure when you made that
fell
shift.
into that. Yeah.
So
that was accident.
Yeah. How did that happen? And how does the person that you are now and these life lessons that you've gathered along the way, how do you impart that on the students? Because you're at an alternative high school where these are people in
Mm-hmm.
a difficult situation that might not be, the traditional student that just wants to sit there and, I'm going to go get my straight A's.
Mm-hmm.
How do you impact those people?
Like I said, I fell into teaching. I got laid off as a chemist while I was on maternity leave with my oldest. it was just, they were downsizing.
More whitening toothpastes were coming out on the market.
Well, at this point, I was working at a plant that we purified corrosive gases for the semiconductor industry.
The stuff, like, it's crazy to me, all these things. I want a rabbit trail on all these things, but I just want you to keep talking and tell me more. It's crazy.
So it was, semiconductor industry at the beginning of the 2000s took a crash.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And so it was like, well, we don't need our plant to run 24/7. So, and because I used to work opposite somebody, I had 4 10s.
Mm-hmm.
So our shift was just eliminated.
And again, what's your degree?
So I have a degree in ecology and systematic biology. Supposed to be a wildlife biologist.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I realized as I was graduating my first husband, it was like he was a very dominating and kind of easily jealous person. And here I am looking to get a job where I'm going to be working out in the field.
Surrounded by dudes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, yeah, this isn't going to work, is it? And then I have a degree in chemistry.
Okay.
So that was it. It was, my mom, 2 marriages. So basically both of them ended when my brother and sister were young, when I was young. So primarily she was a single mom. I mean, my dad was involved, but single mom. My mom was a workaholic. I mean, her job was first.
Yeah.
So that's part of the things that I ran into is my brother and sister were 8 and 10 years older than I was.
Okay, I was going to ask you if you had siblings.
So I was basically an only child. So as my growing up years, I was home alone and bored. What does that do?
Yeah, latchkey kid. Yeah.
It sounds like you're kind of the same way. Yeah,
Yep.
no, so I fell into the wrong crowd and make some great decisions. So when I got laid off, it was just kind of like, what?
What now?
What do I do? And that was when my husband was like, you don't have to go back to work. And it was just like, that's an option?
Really? What would I do?
Right. It was, to me, that's just something you do.
Blasphemy. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And I loved it. Yeah, who knew that staying home with your kids would be awesome?
Yeah. Well, not that it's easy work by any stretch.
No, not at all. It wasn't a, bonbons and TV all day kind of thing. But I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have that constant supervision. And I didn't want that for my kids either. I really was like, I wanted to be involved. Like I said, I didn't have a great relationship with my mom. And then now as I've gotten older, a lot of it is on me.
Yeah.
I didn't allow for it.
There's a lot of similarities in our stories as you're explaining this to me. Yeah.
But it was like, if I'm going to be a parent, because again, I started late, had my oldest at 35, it's like, I'm going to do the best damn job that I can do to get it right.
Yeah.
Which still.
It's almost counter to what we experienced when we were kids. It's, your driving force is to give them the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she was a year old, and there happened to be an adjunct position came up at Southern Oregon University in the chemistry department. It was just teaching a lab. And it was kind of like, well, do you want to do this? And my husband was like, I can either come home, or we ended up getting a sitter just for the afternoon. And it was like 2 days a week kind of thing. And it was like,
it's good balance.
Yeah, something to do. And then so my girls are about not quite 2.5 years apart. So I did that for a little bit. And then we went on sabbatical to Salt Lake. He'd finished up some research that he had been doing while he was working on his PhD while I was pregnant with our youngest. So it was kind of the same thing. So then that whole year we went there in the beginning of summer. She was born in November. So I had the whole year, with them. And we came back to Ashland, and I ended up working as the job title was educational assistant. And in Ashland, they have only one high school and one middle school.
Okay.
And so the high school, their alternative education program is basically night school / get kids ready for their GED.
Gotcha.
So I ended up tutoring them. I'd given them the pretest. Okay, these are kind of, areas you're like deficient in. Let's get you ready. I would drive them to the community college where the test was administered. I'd drive them back to Ashland. It was like the community college was in Medford. So I was meeting kids who, I want to say one might have had a child. There was like some other kids who just school wasn't their thing.
Yeah, at risk.
Yeah. And then I had a set of twins who they were homeschooled. And so getting their GED was they were going to go to college, but that was like their access
the stepping stone
doing. So, I met the gamut, and that was the first time it was like, there isn't just one way to go. Because when I grew up, our alternative high school, that's where the bad kids went.
Yeah.
And it still has that stigma.
Yeah.
But it was like, Frank Church is there's 2 requirements to get into Frank Church. One of them is credit deficit, meaning you're behind in your credits. But the other one is social emotional need. pretty much just about every kid can qualify for that.
Right.
But if you have seen somebody for anything, whether it be depression, anxiety, suicide ideation, like that qualifies for social emotional need. And so, we have a lot of kids that just don't fit in. We have some kids that are really smart and they do the work and they're on top of it. And we have other kids that just kind of got lost in a large classroom. And then all of a sudden they come to Frank Church. We have smaller size classes. So, if you're that one that kind of tends to get in trouble, sorry, you're going to have more eyes on you because we have smaller classrooms. And all of a sudden they get success. So we have honor roll too. And you'll get these kids that will get on honor roll because they have a 3.0 and they're like,
never thought they'd do that.
Made honor roll.
That's awesome. You're having an impact with these people that desperately need it.
Yeah. And so what got me into teaching, we came to Boise. My husband was working at Boise State. After being here for about a year, I did start teaching labs again at night. And then a lecturer position opened up, and it was for nursing chemistry. So nursing chemistry covers like survey of general, organic, and biological chemistry. And it was like, do you want it? Okay. That was the first time I'd ever really taught a classroom.
Do you create your own curriculum or do they hand it to you and say, here, teach
Not
this?
really. Yeah. It was like, here's the book and this is what you're supposed to do. I mean, I knew nothing about teaching. I do have a master's in educational technology. And then since then I have a certificate to teach secondary. But those are like the first times I ever had to take a class on any sort of educational theory, curriculum development.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know I was doing.
Is it imposter syndrome? Like, oh my God, they're going to find out that I don't have this background.
But by the time I left Boise State I really loved the nursing chemistry because I liked the fundamentals of it. I liked turning science speak into everyday words. I felt like I had a knack for that. And then I got moved and all of a sudden had to teach general chemistry. And I was like, okay, I got to go relearn a lot of this.
Oh.
And then on top of that, I had like 150 students in a lecture.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so it was like a little bit of education theory because by that time I was working on finishing my master's in educational technology. But still, that's where like the definite imposter syndrome was coming in.
I can only imagine.
And we were going to go to New Zealand for the year. So my husband was going to go on sabbatical again. We were planning to go on New Zealand. And so then it was like the second semester of the year before we were going to leave, I now have to teach chemistry 111 and 112. So I'm not happy with how I taught 111. So I'm like, okay, I think I can make these tweaks. And oh my God, I got to relearn all the stuff that I don't do for 112. And again, my husband's like, you don't have to do this. And you're right. I just resigned because I was supposed to take a leave of absence while we were in New Zealand. And I kept saying, this isn't what I signed up for. And it was like,
but they need it.
Can I back off? Can I do half of this? And it was like, no.
It's either all in or nothing.
Yeah. And so that was when he was like, you don't have to do this. It's like, you're right, I don't.
You've got an option.
So yeah, I just resigned from Boise State, which was awesome because we were going to rent our house for the year. We were going to have all of our belongings in the garage. So like all of those
you're going to
cupboards.
be in New Zealand,
Well, right. And so like all those cupboards have to be gone through. I would have never had time to do that if I was teaching and didn't get out until May and we were leaving in June.
Crazy.
So we get back from New Zealand. And at the time, my daughters, when they were in New Zealand, they were 3rd and 6th grade. And so as they were approaching middle school, it was like, what about this teaching thing? I think I could be a decent role model because I have not taken the traditional educational path.
No, it's been a winding, varied experience, it sounds like.
And then also having worked with Ashland High School and going, there really isn't one way how to get to the finish line.
Yeah. Well, and you also have the personality where you're approachable, easy to talk to, so you have the knowledge, but then you're also very open, and I think to where somebody feels like they can come and discuss things with you, and
Right. And so it intrigued me. So we came back from New Zealand and I didn't have a job. And I was working as a grad student for a little bit while we were in New Zealand doing online stuff. when we were in New Zealand, I did pick up a paper route just as something to do.
Are you riding a bike with them on the back?
No, it was delivering kind of like weekly throwaway things within the immediate area, but we lived on the top of a hill. Well, we lived on top of a hill and it was close. And so it was just easier to walk.
Oh, nice.
But it was walkable. But I had to do it in 2 bits because it was so much. We were somewhat in the middle. So I would do on the one side of our house and then come back and restock and then do the lower bit.
Out.
But so I came back and was like, what do I want to do? And I ended up worked for the post office for a little bit. I got 2 jobs at the same time. I got the job as a postal carrier and working in the activities department at a full care facility.
Oh my gosh.
And then the postal department, I only lasted there for about 3 weeks. I was just like,
not your jam.
I loved the physical part of it, but I realized the physical part of it was kind of hard. And I was actually making a little bit more at the other place, versus it was just Saturdays too for the post office. And so it was kind of like,
I want my weekends back.
Yeah. But I think it was working in the activities department, getting these people out who, just to play bingo with. I was dealing with people who were nonverbal and we're playing Uno and you could just see the lights still firing in their brains. And I was just like,
loving the interaction.
I want to stay in education and I want to deal with people. So I went back and I got my certificate and I had 3 interviews. When I finished, 2 of them were for middle schools. The one I thought went really great. The person who got hired was in my cohort, and she was one of those people who totally was like, oh, I'm okay losing the job to her. She knows her stuff. And it turned out that was
a good decision.
It turned out she quit by the first semester.
Really? Couldn't hack it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then the other interview was for East Junior High, and I did not click.
Not a fit.
With the principal at all. And I was kind of new going into that school. That was going to be a lot more parent driven.
Yeah.
And I wasn't super
not looking forward to that.
Keen on that. Yeah. And then I interviewed at Frank Church, and it was just like, this
is where I need to be.
I could totally relate being here. And I do remember them asking, I think my question was, what makes you think you could do this job or something like that? And I did pull out the ultra running thing going,
nice.
Well, I run these ultras and I run, and Frank Hansen actually worked there, which I didn't know at the time.
Interesting.
But it was just like, well, so I have a lot of endurance, so I can
I can keep up with these kids. They're not going to be able to keep up with me.
And I look back on that, I'm like, why did I even say that? But it was just like, I got a call.
That's the trump card right there.
I interviewed earlier in that day, and then I had to pick up my youngest daughter had volleyball practice. So I'm taking her and her friends. I'm doing the rounds to pick up friends, and I get a call like that afternoon. Do you want the job?
They're ready to bring you in.
And I belong there.
Nice.
I belong there. It's me, and I am it.
And I'm sure that they probably see the alignment of what they need as well in you. And how long have you been there now?
I've been there since 2017. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And to the point where if we have a couple of departments have had to downsize a little bit, and it being part of you have an education job. They can't just let you go. They'll find a place for you at another school. It's like, if it came down to me, I don't know if I would go back to a traditional school. And I've never taught at a traditional school to really have anything
you found the spot where
this is me, and I'm either here or not.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the interactions of kids and social media and that distraction? Does that become an issue in class? Or are you able to have them keep that separate and keep it out?
I want to say it's getting better, especially this year. So I think overall the district was really going to have a hard no phones stance where they really haven't before. And I suck as a phone monitor. I am just not that person who's going to ride or.
No, it's got to be tough. Like you said, you don't want to be a parent. You're there to teach and educate.
And I tell them up front, before I would tell them up front, if the phone's a distraction, then I'm going to need to have a conversation with that person.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be the blanket, no phones out at all.
Yeah.
But this year, supposedly Frank Church was going to take not as strict a stance as the other schools.
Yeah, they cut it. You can't have phones in class.
And I want to say it's finally clicked to where I haven't had a student with their phone out at an inappropriate time at all.
Nice. Well, it probably speaks volumes to you as an educator as well, too, that you're keeping them interested, keeping them engaged to where they're staying focused on what it is that you're sharing with them.
Yeah, I want to say that, but I'm reflecting back to last quarter where I had 2 kids that were still very much engaged and would do this stuff, but it was like, if I had that awkward pause, oh my God, the phone's out for a game. And it's just like, you guys.
As soon as you stop to take a breath. Oh, that's crazy. Well, what other race did you have coming up here? You've got Hard Rock, but I saw you have another one coming up as well.
So I have Badger Mountain coming up.
That's what it was, Badger Mountain. And that's in Washington, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did Buffalo last year just to kind of give me a reason to kind of run through the winter, because otherwise it's easy just to let all the other winter activities.
Got to have that goal.
Yeah. So I have Badger. It's not on ultra sign up. So I have Running Up for Air, I think, and I could be wrong, I think it just started in Salt Lake, but they have a version in Ogden and Provo now too. And I think it was started by Jared Campbell, but I could potentially be wrong. He may, just because of his name, have...
be tied to it.
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously tied to it. He may not have been the starter.
Gotcha.
That's where I might be wrong. But it's to bring awareness to just the poor air quality. And I think, again, I could be wrong here. I think it's in general worldwide.
Yeah, okay.
So I think a lot of the funds they raise goes to air quality
research,
nonprofits and stuff that aren't just central in the Salt Lake.
Is that something that you do on your own? They give you the target and then you
Yep. Do
go out
you
and do
remember, I don't know if you were around, Tony Huff did the Running Monkey Challenge, so Survey.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's kind of like that.
Okay.
And that they do have various hours and you can do it as a relay.
Okay.
But it's basically, so the one in Salt Lake is Grand Deer Peak. You're going up and then down. And so I'm doing 12 hours. There's one in Ogden, and that's March 1st. So I'm thinking of just doing the 24-hour there. But the one in Provo, which is Squaw Peak, which is now named something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is something in whatever, I'm going to sound ignorant, but whatever tribe Squaw Peak is, like it's their...
There's still something within that.
It's their language, even though the first time I saw it, it starts with a K and it's like 4 letters. And so it looks like they have some sort of radio tower up there? Because I was thinking that was the symbol.
Oh.
And then until I read behind it, and it's like, yeah, this word means, and it was like,
oh, geez. Oh, you're educated on it now.
But that's in May when school's done. So I'll do the 24-hour. Nice. And that's kind of like for my hard rock training of just...
getting vert.
Yeah, vert climb hour after hour. And I'm going to do the best just to, do one lap and then force myself to get back out there, do another.
Just keep doing it one at a time. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we've been going for a while here, but I want to ask you a couple more questions. Okay. The one I'm going to ask now, I want to preface it because it sounds political, but it's not. I don't even get into politics in those discussions. But what's the one message that you think the world needs to hear right now more than anything?
I'm going to say, because I was kind of prepared for your legacy question. So it's kind of along that, though. But being an active participant in your life, because I don't necessarily believe things happen for a reason. I'm not that kind of person. Yeah. I mean, I truly believe I am who I am because of the mistakes I've made, the privileges or whatever you want to call them, I've been offered. I'm who I am based on my experiences.
Absolutely.
And how I reacted to those experiences. And you only get that by being an active participant in your life. If you sit there passively and, it's not my fault because, or this person did this to me and this is why I'm where I'm at, or,
you're waiting for an outside influence to make a decision for you.
And I think it does stem back to what I heard a long time ago was you're the only one who's going to be there for you. Yeah. And so again, it's like, how is that going to help save the world? Well, again, if we all are active participants, I mean, we are social creatures. Right. We do need each other. And that's awesome. And if, we can do that, be kind to each other, think of how much easier things would be. But again, if we're taking responsibility for our actions and actually being active in our decision making, think of how wonderful the life.
It would be absolutely amazing. Yeah, and as you were explaining that, it got me thinking, what's the balance to you and for you? because you're talking about when we are social creatures, which is part of, my reasons for doing this is I needed interaction with people. And so where's the balance for you of ultras and the time out running by yourself and the social aspect and the social dynamic of the sport as a whole?
So I'm a little bit of an introvert. So I want to say part of me enjoys being out there by myself.
Yeah,
and a lot of my running has always been by myself, partly because it's also, those stints of being a stay-at-home mom. A lot of the times it was just like, I can get in a run at this time and you're available or you're not.
Yeah.
So, I do. It's like joining the Tree City Track Club. You do get that sense of sometimes you're so wrapped up in your own head and your own point of view that when you are out with others, you get a different perspective.
Yeah.
And so you grow when you get that different perspective. And so if you are always so isolated and then all alone, you're not going to get that different perspective to kind of open your eyes up to either new things, new experiences, or oh, you mean I've been thinking of this thing the wrong way?
Yeah. There's so much more enjoyment that you can get when you open yourself up to all the aspects of it. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So it sounds like you knew this was coming. The closer question, what does legacy mean to you? And what's the legacy that you want to be remembered for?
I think that's it. I went into teaching partly to be a role model from my experiences of there's not one way to do it.
Yeah.
And I think what I've also learned over the last couple of years is that it's okay for the finish line to be movable. There's not just one finish line. You might tackle something and that might then go, oh, well, maybe I need to keep going. So I'm going to either push the finish line further or I am going to take a different trajectory to get to that finish line because of this opportunity.
That's a great point.
So I think a lot of it is just somebody who is an active participant in life and willing to not become stagnant, regardless of where your lot in life is. You can always grow, and not growing is where you're going to get yourself into trouble.
So lost.
And if you grow crooked, that's okay. You're growing.
It's like they say, even what is it? Even the dandelions will grow from the cracks in the sidewalk.
Yeah. So someone that's just kind of all about growth by whichever means.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time to sit and chat with me. As I'm going back through this, I'm already thinking of all the different questions I wish I would have asked to go down these different rabbit holes of the experiences and stuff. But I've enjoyed getting to know you more because we've known each other for years, but really haven't had a chance to sit down like this and have a discussion. And I've really, really enjoyed it. And it's been fun watching you as you've experienced these memories again, because I can see the emotion go through you. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to to share that.
Sure.
And I wish you nothing but luck at Hard Rock. And I cannot wait to hear about that experience.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you again so much for taking the time.
Sure. Thank you, Jake.
All right. We'll talk again soon.
Yep.
What an absolute blast that was chatting with Lynette. Her energy is infectious and her story is a reminder that growth happens when we push beyond our comfort zones. Ultra running isn't just about miles and finish lines. It's about resilience, self-discovery, and embracing the adventure no matter where the trail leads. I truly loved having this conversation, and Lynette's energy has left me chomping at the bit to get out there on my own next adventure. I hope the same is true for you. Thank you for sharing your time and listening to this episode. If you're enjoying what I'm doing with this podcast, please like and follow the Run From The Norm Facebook page to see when we release future podcast releases. And you can also learn more at www.runfromthenorm.com, including signing up for the monthly newsletter that will start at the end of February. In it, I will be sending you a short wrap-up of all that has been shared in that month, including links to the podcast episodes as we ramp up production in 2025, notes from a growing sponsor list. Thank you again to Tree City Track Club for sponsoring this episode, and maybe even a bad joke or two. It's just another way I'm trying to provide value and inspiration, regardless of whether you're an ultra runner, someone looking for a new challenge, or just trying to figure out what's next in life. So thanks for tuning in, and if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it, subscribe, and let us know what resonated with you. And until next time, keep running, keep exploring, and most of all, get outside and run from the norm.
Check that mic, make sure it sound right, boy.